In what appears to be a critical step towards bringing a possible end to the Russia-Ukraine war, US President Donald Trump has announced that he is arranging a two-way peace meeting between his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky.
And that will be followed by a trilateral meeting involving the two leaders and Trump. Trump made this announcement in a Truth Social post after holding talks with Zelensky and a host of European leaders in the White House. In this post, Trump also said that he dialed Putin for holding direct talks with Zelensky. Trump said that the two-way meeting will be followed by a trilateral summit. The location of that has not been decided yet, but Trump interrupted the meeting with European leaders to make that call to Putin, which lasted all of 40 minutes.
There has been an interruption. During this time, the American president spoke on the phone with the Russian president and agreed that there will be a meeting between the Russian president and the Ukrainian president within the next 2 weeks. This meeting is to take place at a location that still needs to be arranged. President Trump has agreed to then invite for a trilateral meeting again, so that the negotiations can now truly begin.
Well, President Donald Trump pitched for a peace agreement at the White House meeting. He said a ceasefire is not necessary to end the war. Well, this echoes his earlier comments that brought his position more in line with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who he met last week in Alaska.
Substantial progress in many ways. I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight.
In response, Kremlin said that Putin and Trump discussed the idea of exploring the possibility of direct talks at a higher level during their 40 minutes phone call. Putin and Trump agreed to continue close contact with each other on the Ukrainian crisis and other pressing issues.
Now, Zelensky, on the other hand, says he is ready for any format to meet with Putin. However, there shouldn't be any conditions for the talks. Ukrainian president said that territorial issues will be decided during the direct talks. Zelensky hailed talks with Trump as good and normal and said that the details of security guarantees will be worked out within 10 days.
No, we don't have any date. We don't have any date. We just confirmed after this productive meeting with the president and then with all our colleagues, with partners, we confirmed that we are ready for a trilateral meeting. And if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral. So I said always, so Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of format, but on the level of leaders.
A host of European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen, NATO Chief Mark Rutte, among others, they called for a ceasefire before a trilateral meeting, while Merz said that Ukraine should not be forced into territorial concessions. Macron made it clear that White House talks did not discuss Ukraine territorial concessions.
If we play this well, we could end this, and we have to.
The third aspect I want to address regarding Ukraine, which has not been discussed again today, is that no territorial concessions should be imposed. The Russian demand that Kyiv give up the free parts of Donbass corresponds, to put it bluntly, to a proposal for the United States to have to give up Florida. A sovereign state cannot simply make such a decision lightly. This is a decision that Ukraine must make itself in the course of negotiations.
But if at the end this process is met by refusal, we are also ready to say that we need to increase sanctions and, in any case, adopt a stance that puts more pressure on the Russian side to return to the negotiation table. This is essentially what was decided today.
And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Ronald Grigorsuni from Michigan. He is an American historian and political analyst specializing in Russian affairs. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast on WION World is One. So let me start by asking, do you think this proposal for Ukraine to cede territory in exchange for vague security guarantees, do you think that's the credible way forward to go for lasting peace?
This is a tragic situation, but it may be the only way to move forward. That is, wars have consequences. And basically, Russia occupied part of Ukraine, they say about 20%, and they're not going to give that up. In fact, they want a little more because in their constitution, as they amended it, they are claiming 4 provinces plus Crimea. So if they want to make peace, and the Russians are in such a good position, they're making steady, though slow advances, it's likely that if we're going to come to peace, there will have to be these bitter territorial concessions by Ukraine to Russia.
Ronald, there seem to be inconsistencies with what Trump has said and what the European leaders are suggesting after the meeting has happened, even though they're all coming out saying it was very constructive, very productive, all of that. But when you look at the statements, they don't seem to be in tandem. Let me just talk about the territorial concessions. Trump shows a map to Zelensky, and it clearly shows certain parts of it 20% under Russian control. And Zelensky says, I like the map, I want to take it home. And then you have European leaders saying that territorial concessions were not at all discussed. How do you read this?
I think that territorial discussions were mentioned here and there by Trump, particularly, by almost no one else. Certainly not by Zelensky, as I remember. But it's clear that that's what they're moving toward. And that the only way that you can really end the war is, sadly, and this is very tragic, as I said, by making these concessions. Where the boundaries will be drawn, whether it will be where the current armies are standing, or whether other adjustments will be made, that's what they're going to negotiate about before they finally come to a peace. And yes, you're right. There's not a unitary position between Europe and America. You heard some people talking about ceasefire, still bringing that up. The Chancellor of Germany. And Trump never would go in for ceasefire because Putin doesn't want that.
Absolutely. And while we know that ceasefire is one sticking point, the other sticking point is, of course, the security guarantees again, which were talked extensively, but without much detail. Now, going into it, we've heard that they have said that they're going to get some Article 5-like level security guarantees. And of course, Europe and US are going to ensure and have an active role to play in that. But the other pertinent question is that what happens when Russia doesn't agree to the statement, which has happened in the past as well?
Yes, so this was a big breakthrough that actually the United States, that is Trump, decided that he would participate in some kind of security guarantees. And you're perfectly right. They haven't been specific about it. That is, someone like Prime Minister Meloni mentioned, and this was indeed an Italian position at first, that other people accepted, that it should be on the Article 5 of the NATO treaty model. And that's a pretty strong guarantee, because that would mean that if Russia attacked what was left of Ukraine, all those powers that have signed onto this agreement, including the United States, would have to respond. Now, does that mean that there'll be American troops there? I doubt that very much. Trump doesn't like sending troops abroad. He'd rather pull them out, as he's doing with the Kurds in northern Syria. So that's not a starter. But is he going to give, will he be willing to give intelligence or air cover? That's a different matter. So that's part of what will be negotiated. What do these security guarantees actually mean?
Ronald, and it was just days ago when it was just yesterday when they said that NATO is off the table, Crimea cannot be discussed anymore, and now US is agreeing to the security guarantees, is Article 5 in place. There's a lot of confusion at best at this point. We will need to wait for clarity, but thanks so much for joining us here on World DNA. Pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure, my pleasure too.